It begins with the sound of wind through cane and the faint rhythm of chains. In 1847, near the edge of a Louisiana parish called Duval's Crossing, a farmer found his entire field flattened overnight, as if a colossal body had lain there in silence. The neighbors said they heard a woman whispering just before dawn. Her voice came from the earth itself. When the farmer's boy leaned close, he swore he heard her say, "He took my daughters." The town priest told them to burn the soil, but fire didn't bite it. What they unearthed was not a skeleton, but a human-sized shackle twisted into the shape of a hand. Records from Duval's Crossing show 9 slave births unaccounted for in 1839. No graves, no transfers, just a mark beside each name, an X drawn deeper than ink should go. Local archives tried to erase it, but the handwriting survived, pressed into the paper like a bruise. The woman's name was listed as Miriam of House Duval. Height unknown. Labor, field and maternity. A doctor's note adds, unnatural growth during confinement. By 1843, the plantation logs mention her no more. Yet every spring, families along the river found newborn calves split open, bones rearranged as if by massive hands. No one spoke Miriam's name again. But the church bells rang at odd hours, sometimes before dawn, sometimes when the sky went black at noon. There are stories, told by the descendants of Duval's slaves, about 9 infants who never cried. Their eyes were described as black mirrors, their breath cold. Each was said to have been taken from Miriam within days of birth. Witnesses said the master kept them in the smokehouse. After his death, the building was sealed, yet years later, children dared each other to look through the cracks. They claimed to see shadows crawling on the inside walls. Shadows shaped like girls, stretching their fingers as if trying to escape. When Union surveyors arrived a decade later, they found Duval's Crossing half submerged by the river. Only the church steeple and a chimney remained. Inside the church, painted on the back wall in soot, were 9 headless dolls in a ring. The priest's diary said, "They sing without mouths." Locals believed Miriam's whisper had grown. A storm underground, humming through the roots. One entry ends with, "The land won't take seed. The ground remembers her weight." In 1923, a wooden crate arrived at the Louisiana State Museum. Contents marked agricultural relics. Inside, rusted chains, a bone carved into a woman's face, and a letter written in careful penmanship. The mother has been silent, but she moves still beneath the parish. Do not open the soil where the cane bends. The curator sealed the crate and logged it under unknown. Weeks later, he was found hanging beside it, mouth packed with dirt. In 1938, as part of the WPA Slave Narratives Project, researchers interviewed elderly freedmen from Duval's parish. One woman, aged 112, whispered something so faint they almost missed it. "She ain't dead. She under." The transcription pauses with a note. Subject went rigid. Voice deepened unnaturally. The tape ends with a sound resembling breath drawn through water. Technicians who played it afterward swore they heard a second voice counting. Slowly, up to 9. In 1941, a seminary student researching demonic folk legends of the South visited the abandoned church. His diary was found months later, pages warped with humidity. The final entry read, "The dolls are gone. The pulpit moves when no one breathes. I saw her shadow climb the ceiling." He described hearing chanting under the floorboards, as if hundreds of voices whispered through mud. The next page was blank except for one faint line. "She remembers what the master did." A historian uncovered the Duval family's plantation accounts in 1946. Among crop tallies was a separate section marked personal expenditures. 9 transactions, each for a length of silk, a small ring, and something listed only as correctional implement. On the final page, a note scrawled in haste. "The giant refuses to labor. I will teach her obedience through her bloodline." The handwriting grows erratic, ending with a smear shaped like a handprint. When a new school was built on the old Duval property in 1950, workers unearthed a bone the length of a man's arm but curved like a woman's hip. They buried it again quietly. Within months, the children began drawing the same image in their copybooks. A tall woman kneeling, her face hidden by her hands. Teachers burned the drawings, but the next day more appeared, etched into desks, into skin. In 1953, shortwave operators in Baton Rouge reported interference carrying fragments of a female voice repeating, 9 beneath. The transmission always ended with a wet, dragging sound. The FCC investigation traced the source to a dead frequency range overlapping the parish's coordinates. One agent who listened too long collapsed, whispering that something was knocking from the soil. The cemetery of Duval's Crossing has no names, only small iron posts bent in one direction, as if the wind itself bowed there. Grave diggers say the ground pulses faintly when rain hits it. A geologist testing the area in 1971 recorded subsonic vibrations, like a heartbeat, deep and slow. His notes conclude, possibly seismic, or possibly calling. He never filed the full report. A surviving reel-to-reel recording, dated 1984, captures an archivist describing his discovery of Miriam's birth record. Midway, he stops, breath quickening. I think she's... A heavy scraping noise follows, then a deep sigh. The last words are barely audible. She wants her daughters. The tape ends abruptly. When police searched his office, the shelves were bare except for 9 blank folders. In 1992, a journalist photographing ruins of southern plantations reported seeing a massive figure reflected in her camera lens, though nothing stood behind her. The developed film showed a woman, twice the height of any doorway, kneeling beside a row of 9 small headless silhouettes. She burned the negatives. The next week, she was found in her apartment, hands covered in soot. A 2003 academic journal briefly mentioned the Duval Parish phenomenon before the issue was retracted. The author proposed that Miriam represented collective racial trauma embodied, a spiritual inheritance of violence. Her colleague, reviewing the paper, wrote in margin notes later leaked online, she's not a metaphor. She's a memory with mess. Local farmers still refuse to plant in that region. They say the soil grows soft and red by morning. A botanist collected samples, finding traces of iron-rich sediment, similar to human blood. But under the microscope, each particle pulsed once, then stopped, as though it had a heartbeat. When tested under heat, the samples released a faint whisper recorded on tape. 9. A televangelist attempted to rebuild the Duval Church in 2010, claiming divine inspiration. During the dedication, his wife collapsed, gasping that, something under us is listening. The foundation cracked that night. He fled the parish and never preached again. Locals found the new church bells fused to their beams, melted by unseen fire. In the age of social media, residents began reporting shared dreams of a giant woman rising from the mud, whispering names they didn't know. The dreams always ended the same way. 9 children standing in a circle, holding mirrors up to the sky. Psychologists called it mass suggestion. But one researcher noted that all the mirrors in those dreams reflected only darkness, no faces. In 2020, construction crews widening a levee near the old Duval estate unearthed 9 child-sized coffins. Each contained bones wrapped in what appeared to be silk. The DNA degraded, impossible to trace. But the boxes emitted a low vibration when moved, causing tools to rattle and workers to vomit. One foreman reported hearing a voice. He's still beneath me. Digital spectrograms of recordings from the site revealed frequencies forming a pattern. A voice encoded in the sound itself. When slowed, it resembled a woman humming an old hymn. Swing low, sweet chariot. But between the verses, another line appeared, one that never existed in the hymn books. He broke them one by one. In 2024, an anonymous letter reached the Louisiana Historical Society. Inside was a single page, scrawled in dirt-colored ink. I am the last of the line. We were told never to speak her name. But she is awake now. She remembers. And she whispers still, not for mercy, but for witness. The handwriting was traced to a descendant of the Duval family. The ink, when tested, contained traces of hemoglobin. And in the night air of the old parish, if you press your ear to the soil, you can still hear it, the slow, rhythmic breath of a woman too large to bury, whispering to the darkness what the master did to her 9 daughters.